I didn't get the opportunity to say this earlier when Crystal was on, but, hats off to them doing the panel that they did for you.
Great.
Obviously we wish we had a bigger audience, but, we obviously all do everything we can.
We're small but mighty.
Yeah, small but mighty. Yes, I like that. And so we do everything we can to help spread the word on the issues that really matter. And, regardless of what, people will say and how much of an impact it did have, I really like to think that, getting the word out there and being completely relentless about this, really made a difference for you. We're certainly hopeful that, we can do the same, for Julian. That's why we do what we do. That's the airing of grievances from the standpoint of our liberties that are just going by the wayside every day. And, when people think that it's not important to put a premium on what you were going through, and then people are, oh, it's just 6 months. Like, no, you don't get it. It's like, this is beyond serious. And just hearing you talk about what the experience was like being in prison, needless to say, we're extremely happy that you're home. We know that the ordeal isn't over yet, but we want you to be here and know that there are so many people supporting your efforts, and we'll continue to support you going forward.
Thank you so much. That appreciate all that. It means a lot.
Yeah. How are you doing now that you're home? I mean, obviously it's better, there's no doubt that that's better, but you've essentially been incarcerated for seemingly 2 years now. Like, so, I mean, are you real? Like, how close are you to this being done?
A lot closer. Thank God. I mean, so basically, as I kind of look back on it, I got incarcerated at home on August 6th, 2019. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
For a misdemeanor. Nobody in the history of this country ever has been incarcerated prior to trial for a misdemeanor for even 1 day when they have no criminal record, which is me. So the Judge Loretta Preska in this case, and Judge Lou Kaplan, who charged me, abused their power. It's my personal opinion. They basically took advantage of the procedure. And I think Julian Assange has said this, it's the procedure that kills you. The abuse of the procedure. And she found that I was a risk of flight, like I was going to flee the country. I have a wife and a 15-year-old son, to avoid a misdemeanor that no one's ever been spent a day in jail for. So they made up this whole kind of narrative to justify pretrial punishment. I never got due process. The United Nations Working Group has ruled that my entire case is a result of what they call a staggering level of judicial bias, and that I'm detained illegally and that I should be released immediately and paid compensation. So, it's been now, it was 813 days in pretrial house arrest. Then I went to prison for 6 months, but they released me after 45 days to go back to house arrest, where I am now. I'm not free.
No.
I will be here being monitored and unable to leave except for very kind of narrow circumstances until April 25th. But the difference between my situation at home now and my situation at home the last time you spoke to me is my days are officially being counted toward the end of my sentence. Whereas before I was on this like indefinite, crazy situation of indefinite home detention. And I will point out, and I really need to write about this on social media because it just drives me crazy. Like, in what rule of law country does your detention prior to trial not count toward your sentence if you get convicted?
Yeah. Okay. Right?
Why is it that they can put me here for 2 years and 2 months, and then she gives me 6 months, but none of the 2 years and 2 months can apply to the 6 months? What's interesting about the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention is they ruled that no, you can't do that. That's illegal. Like, I've served 4 times my sentence already and I'm still not free.
Yeah, no, we talked about that when you were on. Like I said, and it's been a long time since I've practiced criminal law. Yeah. But to me, it would have been time served, like no brainer. Like you wouldn't even think about that at this point. But it's apparently we live in a kangaroo court system and we no longer have due process. And that's just the way we all live now. And we just accept it. I feel like we've basically turned a corner in our judicial system that I don't know that we could come back from.
Yeah, and Walker, I don't think it was you who wrote the article, but an article came out today where apparently there was like a Trump associate that put up $22 million to make sure Amy Coney Barrett got on the Supreme Court.
I call her Amy Coney Island.
Yeah, and again, it's just this. It's like this open season of like the whole breaking down of our system. You're seeing it every day. It's so transparent, and that's why, like I said, and we've been mentioning it on every panel this evening.
Yeah.
When Pelosi speaks on the national, it speaks to national media this week and says, yeah, we do insider trading. What are you going to do about it? It's if to say, yes, the system's broken and we're benefiting from it and you guys are getting screwed. What are you going to do about it? You know, that's. Yeah.
I want to say the biggest travesty is just the fact that I would mock her and call her Amy Coney Island. I am someone that right out of like, I worship Thurgood Marshall. Like this is something like even justices that I didn't like even someone like Scalia, respected him, didn't agree with him, but he was a really smart jurist and whatever. I mean,
he gave us George Bush.
I'm not saying I agree with him, but I'm just saying like we have fallen to a level of we have people sitting on the Supreme Court that have never tried cases. Like we've really reached a low that I would mock people that are in our highest court in the land. Like I used to have some sort of reverence for that. I even have a dorky picture of me outside the Supreme Court, like all excited, like going there. Like I would be the ultimate dork about that. And I think that it's a travesty.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Guys, hop in.
Yeah.
Kevin, Walker.
And I have to tell you, it's not the worst time to be homebound in New York.
Well, I want to say this. Walker, first of all, thank you, because you and your partner, David Sirota, wrote a story in July of wait a second. It was July of 2020. Year and a half.
Hey, time just.
I've lost track of time.
It's just.
Listen, in prison, there's nothing to do. Like there's no clocks, there's no mirrors. Like you don't even know what you look like after.
It's like Vegas, but not fun.
But I mean, they wrote really the first story that framed what was happening to me accurately. I mean, I didn't even understand what was happening to me until I read their story. And and their story basically explained that I was being prosecuted by the fossil fuel industry after the government rejected the case. And it's a playbook where they take direct control of the prosecutorial machinery. They don't even try to hide it. It's the same thing with Enbridge paying the police in Minnesota to arrest indigenous peoples on their own treaty-protected lands, and they try to block a pipeline. They're paid by a private company. The prosecutor was paid by Chevron, and she deprived me of my liberty, Rita Glavin. It's never happened before in our country. So first of all, Walker, thank you. You did a great job. Kevin, first of all, where do these young journalists show up from? Like when I was young, I tried to be a journalist. We had no way to be a journalist. You had to send your resume into a newspaper to try to get a job.
But we also didn't have an internet. Yeah, and there wasn't a way to put your stuff out there without getting hired by a major publication. So there's a lot more opportunity now. But yeah, I think that's a good point. But we also had better journalists then too.
Yeah, you guys.
Stay out of J school.
I know. You guys are very nice to me. I just want to throw it back at you because all of y'all, and I mean this seriously, as a former journalist, what y'all are doing is really creating space for alternative narratives to gain traction and credibility. And I can't tell you how that has impacted my life in a positive way. Because I truly believe when I was in Danbury prison for 45 days, the fact that the case had been covered, the fact that staff, by the way, when someone new comes in, they're always looking at their paperwork and figuring out what they're in for and who they are, and they Google them. And I was this person with a public persona, who had been written about, and Amnesty International put out an urgent action bulletin. I was getting dozens of letters a day in prison. And the staff took notice. They treated me with respect. I had congresspersons, Jim McGovern, AOC, among others, writing letters. McGovern tried to come visit me because of COVID. He couldn't. But all of this created, I think, a feeling of why is this guy in our prison? Because, the power of the judges who abused their power to try to impose suffering on me as retaliation for my work as a human rights lawyer. It didn't extend into the Bureau of Prisons. It was very obvious. Like there was no skin in the game for them. They had no reason to do Chevron's bidding and punish Steve Donziger. I was just a guy in a misdemeanor who they're like looking at the paper like, why the F is he in our prison? Like, we've never seen this before. He's not an inmate. So they applied their policy, I think, in an appropriate way, in a neutral way, and concluded I should serve the rest of my sentence at home. But the reality is it's still punishment. I shouldn't be here to begin with. And I just want to point out that I think that the work that all of y'all do is really important. And I actually think it had a concrete impact on me being here rather than in Danbury right now. So thank you.
I wanted to ask you what your plans are when you're finally done with this. I mean, as far as I know that you just got disbarred for this. Is that what they did to you? And is there any recourse for that? Like, what is your plan?
Yeah. So first of all,
not that they disbarred him.
Oh yeah, no, he got disbarred.
Indulge me for a second and say, like, the day my sentence ends, I'd like to just spend a day or two or a week at the beach.
Oh yeah,
really.
And go swimming because I had an ankle bracelet on, for over 2 years. And, I'm sort of saying this somewhat in jest, but it's also serious. Like, I love to swim in the ocean. And like, I've never been in the ocean for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Okay? And I grew up in Florida at the beach. So like, that's something I'd love to do immediately. But more broadly, I'm thinking of really getting into sort of doing media work around the intersection of law, human rights, and environmental justice. I think I have a lot to say about those issues, but I also want to be sure that the indigenous peoples in Ecuador that I've worked with for almost 30 years now have a legal team that can carry forward their claims such that Chevron has to comply with the judgment and pay damages and clean up the ancestral lands. But I don't know, I'm sort of taking the holidays to sort of do some reflecting on what I see as my next phase. I'm really excited about the future. I think that this might sound crazy, I'm sorry, but like the last 2 years and 3-4 months, and I've been on detention, I've grown in ways as a person that I never really expected. I've gotten to understand much better how it works. You guys are precocious, like you sort of grew up knowing the New York Times is BS. I actually believed in the New York Times until about 3 years ago. Okay, so my education the last 3 years, while I've been dealing with this, has been, and also going into prison. I bet y'all don't know that I edited a book published by HarperCollins in 1996 called The Real War on Crime. And it actually deconstructed criminal justice policy back then.
That was the year when it all went to shit.
Exactly. So, the 90s and the Democrats had to sort of inoculate themselves against soft on crime after Dukakis lost in 88. And Bill Clinton did all these and Joe Biden, they were all in on it. Ted Kennedy even. And they just had this tough on crime kind of thing that led to these crazy mandatory minimums, among other problems. And like I wrote about it in a book in 96. And then like, who would think 25 years later, I'm on the other side of the fence experiencing it personally. Okay. So, I kept a journal inside every day. First of all, you need to understand how isolating prison is. Like you can't talk to anyone on the outside. There's no internet. Okay. There's no phones. There's a phone. You get 15 minutes a day to talk to someone. It's usually family. You're not like working. You're not doing interviews. And the way I spent most of my time is I wake up really early in the morning, get out of my cell. I'd get my hot tea. I go to this place where I could see the sky through the slats in the windows and I'd write. So I wrote a bunch of stuff. I kept a diary or a journal day to day. And I'd like to maybe turn that into something that could be published. So I'm going to work on that in the next few months while I'm still in house arrest and, continue doing interviews and continuing admiring the work of Walker and Kevin and you guys. So I'm good.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.